Today I'm going to be learning about the German military, and honestly I don't know too much about the current state of the German military. I've been learning about some other countries like Poland and Finland, and I know that they've been building up their militaries, have very efficient militaries, have strong militaries, but when it comes to Germany, I don't really know too much. This is actually called the German military will become Europe's most powerful. Here is why. So interested to see why that would be. Tell me if you know. I guess we'll find out in this. But is it an increase in spending? Is the spending being more efficiently used? What's the current state in your opinion? If I was to compare to Britain, I know about the British military, but our military I think is just very underfunded at the moment. When you look at a country like Poland, for example, and how they're strengthening, and obviously maybe they have a more they have a need for it more because of their border and what's going on in Ukraine. But I feel like other countries should be following their lead and strengthening their military. Tell me what you think about the German military. Let's watch and learn.
Fighter jets and helicopters that don't fly. Standard issue assault rifles that don't shoot straight. And shortages in ammunition, boots, and even underwear during a NATO mission in Lithuania. These are the headlines that the once feared German military are currently making.
I mean, if I just stop, it's so reminiscent of the British military as well. Like, we have great soldiers, but this sort of thing really, I can relate to it a lot. Interesting to know how it can become the strongest coming from this position.
Not to mention the hundreds of millions of euros that went to consultants in an effort to clean up the army's mess, with very little to show for it. Tell
me more about that as well. What was that all about? Is that a scandal? Is that just accepted? What was the result of this?
German high-ranking officials are raising their concerns, and so are NATO allies, where statements such as these are not uncommon. Ever since the Cold War ended in 1991, Germany has allowed its military to deteriorate. And this is somewhat understandable, as Germany was busy integrating the West with the East, which posed great economic and social challenges. Over the last 30 years, there was simply very little incentive to have a powerful military, as Germany doesn't share a border with potential aggressors like Russia. NATO, and especially the US, was there for protection, and unlike the US and the UK, Germany had very few overseas commitments, and there was very little appetite for a large military among the population. We still remember the horrors of World War II.
Yeah, tell me what you think about it. Obviously, that seems like there's quite a few factors there that you can kind of understand why there was maybe not as much focus on the military, but I think like having a strong military is always something that's important because you never know what's around the corner. Do you think German politicians took the eye off the ball? Things like NATO protection here, talking about the US. Do you think like European countries have just relied on the US too much, always thinking that they'll get countries out of trouble if anything comes up? Do you think it's time that like European countries took back control and put more focus and investment on their military? I know there's like that 2% of GDP like target or like requirement to spend on your military. Obviously, that's just a kind of figure there. But what I learned from Finland as an example is they're very efficient in how they spend as compared to maybe some other countries. Do you think that's a fair number, that 2% to get to? What's Germany in relation to that at the moment?
We'll remember the horrors of World War II. But now, overnight, everything has changed. Only 3 days after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, made a shocking announcement, declaring that Germany will massively increase its defense spending and meet the 2% NATO benchmark. This was met by applause in Parliament, and surveys already show that 75% of Germans support this decision.
Yeah, tell me if you support it. So is that saying at the moment you're not meeting that 2%? What do you think about that? Is that a fair number? Again, it's like having that 2%, it depends how you spend that 2% as well. Like if you're just paying over the odds for your equipment and things like that, it kind of makes it a bit pointless. I guess it's how that 2% spent is the important thing.
But how significant is this increase? Let's have a look at defense spending across the globe last year in 2021. As you can see, Germany spent $52.8 billion, sitting at 7th in the world ranking list, slightly ahead of France, but significantly behind the UK and Russia.
Yeah, and if they do get up to that 2%, you're like going right ahead of a lot of countries there.
But if we
actually, already.
compare percentage of GDP, Germany ranks much lower. Of the 20 biggest military spenders, Germany comes in 15th, as they only spend 1.4% of their GDP on their army. Many have criticized this lack of spending, as it is far below the NATO target of 2%. However, once Germany hits the 2% target, things will look very different. Because of Germany's strong economy, military expenditure would rise to $76.12 billion, putting Germany into 3rd place, ahead of Russia and the UK, making them the frontrunner within the EU and Europe by quite some distance. And German politicians have said as much, clearly stating that this is the intent. And it doesn't stop here. In an effort to modernize the military more quickly, Olaf Scholz has also dedicated a one-time special fund of over 100 billion euros to German defense. This is a lot of money, but spend doesn't necessarily equal military might. The UK, France, and Russia are still far ahead when it comes to military strength. Here we can see the comparison between these nations. While Germany does have a significant number of soldiers, aircraft, and tanks, it only has a very small presence on the sea. France and the UK do have a considerable navy, with multiple destroyers, submarines, and even 3 aircraft carriers in between them.
But from what I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, like I'm not going to say I'm any sort of expert, but our Navy, as much as got numbers there, like supposedly they're not in the best condition. I don't know how much it would cost to upgrade them to like be at like the kind of standard that they should be. But yeah, just looking at purely numbers isn't really the be all and end all for an indication of like the power of the Navy in this instance.
And well, then there's Russia, who just has a lot of everything. As for nuclear weapons, in the aftermath of World War II, it was agreed that Germany cannot possess nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons.
What do you think about that as well? Like, do you think Germany should be allowed it? Obviously, what happened in World War II happened. We're a long way away from that now. Things have changed, unbelievably. Like, should Germany be allowed to have nuclear weapons? Is there any sort of demand or like support for having nuclear weapons in Germany?
However,
obviously countries should be trying to reduce it, but when you see a country like Russia having so much, then you've got to have that. You've got to have that, got to have that defense or that. Got to have something there to make it Germany not such an easy target.
Is somewhat incomplete and flawed, as it does not take into account military modernization, high-tech weapons, logistics, military experience, and intelligence. Whether Germany will become a military superpower also depends on how the money is spent. Scholz has already hinted at a high-level tech wish list, such as the F-35 fighter to replace older Tornado aircraft from the 1970s, the future combat air system, which is developing together with France, heavy transport helicopters, modernization of air defense missile systems, armed drones, modern warships, etc. However, as mentioned at the start of the video, Germany still seems to be getting the basics wrong. Only around 40% of helicopters and 65% of tanks are operational. And it gets even worse. A recent German parliamentary report found that only 50% of major military hardware is working properly. Therefore, money needs to be spent in getting existing equipment up and running first. And as you may remember from the start of the video, the German Bundeswehr has the reputation of wasting taxpayers' money. So, will Germany become the new European superpower? Possibly, but not until Germany cleans up its current mess and invests the new budget wisely. But next to the world's superpowers, such as the US and China, even with Germany's new budget, it remains a small player, as it spends way too little. And this really raises the question, does an EU army make sense? Check out the videos below to see the reasons for and against.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Does an EU army make sense? What are the pros and cons? But again, if you're comparing to like China as the next one on the list, if you do get the spending up there, Germany has a lot more experience as well, a lot more knowledge. when it comes to wars and so on. But yeah, interesting video. So can the German military become Europe's most powerful? I think possibly, but Poland's military is something else. The amount they're investing, the strength of it, like having them as an ally is very important. Not just geographically, but just the size and power of their military. Someone like a country like Finland also, which has conscription and such efficient spending, is good. I guess it's good we're all allies. But tell me what you think about this question. Thanks.